Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Deal, Lauren Frey, Grim Clover, Internet Blood Sports, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. And recently, there has been a recent rash of conspiracies regarding the myth that Nintendo aggressively censors their games. Now, this is not true and never has been true. This company produced Conker's Bad Fur Day back in 2001, and actively promoted it. This idea that Nintendo removes adult content is complete nonsense, but it is a reoccurring myth that has been resurfacing over the past 30 years. And honestly, it's more ridiculous now than ever because we're seeing PlayStation censor games. We're seeing Platinum Games censor games. We're seeing like basically every third party developer on the planet censoring games. But somehow there's no real backlash to it. There is no real discussion. It's only really a problem if Nintendo can be blamed for it. And I do think we have a handful of notable examples recently that really need to be talked about. Bayonetta 3 and Massage Freaks on a Nintendo Switch, both of which were only relevant because YouTubers like Review Tech USA and censorshitters like Niche Gamer were able to weaponize these releases against Nintendo. When in reality, it was the developer themselves that consciously chose to make these decisions, right? And it's not always a bad thing, right? Like in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a big thing going into this was that there was a concentrated effort to convince gamers that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was toned down from 2, that they were removing all the sexualized content. There wasn't going to be any fan service. They were going full woke. It was going to be complete bullshit. And what happens? We get an ending where Rex fucks all three of his waifus, like has children with all three of his waifus. Like it's based as fuck, right? If anything, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is probably the best Xenoblade game, if anything. But when it comes to Massage Freaks, when it comes to Bayonetta 3, the blame has been laid squarely at Nintendo's feet for how these things have turned out, right? And in Massage Freak's case, I think this is simply an attempt at marketing the game. I think the game isn't actually going anywhere. I think there's no real controversy around it. I think they're just trying to drum up interest in the game by presenting themselves as being too raunchy for for Nintendo Switch owners or too raunchy for consoles, right? So their audience more eagerly gets into it, right? That's my feeling on that, right? But when it comes to Bayonetta 3, which I think is the most short-sighted, the most egotistical thing imaginable, um, the blame for the design decisions of Bayonetta 3 initially were believed to be for Nintendo. Like it was Nintendo who ordered that this game to be toned down, who ordered it to be less sexualized, and Hideki Kamiya himself came out and like denied that was the case, but he was really like passive aggressive about it. Like, oh, Nintendo isn't always squares. Like, bro, Nintendo is the only reason you even have a Bayonetta 2 or a Bayonetta 3. Like, these motherfuckers and their, like, sheer arrogance when it comes to shitting on Nintendo, it's bizarre. All right. Like when I compare it to like how Itagaki handled the situation, all right, when that game, when Devil's Third was like actively sabotaged by people at Nintendo of America, like Itagaki was a lot more professional about it. Um, he didn't openly shit on the company for that. Like he understands that this kind of thing happens, right? When it comes to especially during like Iwata's death, right? That was a major problem that affected Devil's Third development. With like Bayonetta though, like seeing people actively try and blame the quality on Nintendo, on like the censorship, uh, like these decisions on Nintendo when it's clearly all Platinum games, right? Like everything wrong with Bayonetta 3 can be laid squarely at Platinum Games' feet. Like it is entirely their fault. The game looks like shit. It runs badly. It runs poorly. It doesn't look good. Like there's nothing appealing about Bayonetta 3, and it's all entirely Platinum Games' fault because they are actively making this push to release games as a service, to go mobile, to like stop producing high quality single player action games and focus exclusively on this shit that absolutely no one wants. Right? To self publish their own titles when that's not necessary for them. They should have just allowed themselves to be acquired by Nintendo and produce high quality, mature action games for a dedicated cult audience. That would have been like the ideal situation for Platinum. But now we're kind of in this early stage where I think this is a Rareware situation. This is like a Silicon Knight situation where Platinum Games thinks the Factor 5 situation where Platinum Games thinks they're so good at what they do that they can like tell Nintendo to go fuck themselves and just kind of do their own thing and develop exclusively on other hardware. And that simply isn't going to happen. Like um, we are going to see like more massive failures coming out of Platinum Games on the coming years. Babylon's Fall, I think, is indicative of the kind of content we're going to see from them. And it needs to be understood more that they are the problem when it comes to stuff like this, right? Like people are so eager to blame Nintendo for everything that they really don't notice the elephants in the room. All right, they don't notice that these controversies exist to to drum up like views for YouTube channels, to to market products, to try and like promote their own like bizarre agendas. Like they don't really think about it in that context. Like all they want to do is shit on Nintendo and blame them for absolutely everything that goes wrong. Like Nintendo is not responsible for Mountain Massage Freaks. They are not responsible for Bayonetta 3. Like there was no reason to even consider consider blaming them when these companies have had a long history of pulling stunts like this and need to be called out more. There is no reason to accuse Nintendo of censoring games in 2022.